Hello and warm regards from the nextias team. Welcome to another episode of the Daily News Analysis. Today, the topics that we are going to cover are: the first one is Aditya-L1 Mission, then Avian Flu, third one is Avalanche Hit UK, Uttarakhand, next is Heatwaves, and last topic that we are going to cover in detail will be Wetland Conservation. The first topic that we have is Aditya-L1 Mission. Now, the backdrop for the news is Aditya-L1 captured the first ever image of the solar flare kernel. It is important from the issues of national importance in science and technology, which is covered under GS paper 3. In this topic, what we are going to do? First of all, we are going to see about the Aditya-L1 mission, what this mission is all about. Secondly, what are the other terms that are related with this mission, that for example, Lagrangian points. Thirdly, we are also going to study about sun, what is the structure of the sun. Next, we are going to study about why we need these solar missions. What is the importance of these solar missions? And lastly, what other missions are being done in this regard? About Aditya-L1 mission. It is India's first space-based solar observatory, which was launched on September 2, 2023. This observatory has been put in the halo orbit in the Earth-Sun Lagrangian point L1. Now, the aim of the mission was to understand the solar radiations, solar winds, and their effect on the Earth's climate and communication systems, because the solar flares, the solar storms, they affect the Earth, Earth's climate, Earth's communication system, and other areas which are of importance to us. Now, next thing is, what are the payloads over this Aditya-L1 mission? First thing is that the visible line emission coronagraph. It studies the solar corona and monitors the dynamics of coronal mass ejections. Second is the Aditya solar wind particle experiment. It studies solar wind and energetic ions. Third one is plasma analyzer package for Aditya. It gathers data on the plasma characteristics and monitors solar winds and its impact on the space weather. Next is solar low energy X-ray spectrometer, which studies X-ray flares from the sun. Next is high energy L1 orbiting X-ray spectrometer. It acts as a hard X-ray spectrometer. Next one is magnetometer. It measures the low intensity interplanetary magnetic fields. And lastly, that is important for us in this news is the solar ultraviolet imaging telescope, that is SUIT. It has actually captured the first ever image of the solar flare kernel, and it is the first time that it has been captured. The impact of this finding is that it is reshaping and understanding the solar flare physics. Secondly, it will also provide crucial insights for predicting solar storms and their potential impact on the Earth. Now, next is, what are Lagrangian points? These are the positions in the space where gravitational forces of two large bodies, for example, Earth and Sun, Earth and Moon, or Earth and Mars, balance the centripetal force of smaller objects. So, these are specific points where the centripetal force of the smaller objects is balanced by the gravitational force of two larger bodies. That is known as Lagrangian points. There are 5 Lagrangian points, L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, and we have placed our solar observatory in the L1 position. The advantage for this L1 position is it is a continuous observation of the sun without Earth's interference. So this L1, why we have put this our observatory in L1? Because it provides a continuous observation of the sun and the Earth's interference is minimal here, or it is not there. Next thing is about sun, what we are studying actually. First of all, we are trying to study the structure of the sun. So the solar atmosphere, there are basically 3 components. The first component is corona, which is the outside one. The corona, which is outside one, you can see it in the black color. It is the outermost layer, most hotter than the photosphere. Second one is the chromosphere. Chromosphere is the irregular layer. It is the middle layer between the photosphere and the corona. And last one is the photosphere, which is actually the visible surface of the sun and which is the innermost layer. So these are the 3 layers of the sun's atmosphere. The outer one is corona, then comes the chromosphere, and third one is the photosphere. Next thing is the solar phenomena. So what solar phenomena do we study? You might have come across the terms like solar winds, solar flare, or solar storms. So what is the difference between them? First one is solar winds. Solar winds are continuous streams of the charged particles from the sun. So it is a stream of charged particles that is coming out of the sun. Next is solar storms. These are sudden explosions of the charged particles and energy. Next is solar flare. It is the intense burst of radiation or light from the sun. So solar flare, what is solar flare? It is the intense burst. What is solar storms? These are sudden explosions. What are solar winds? These are continuous streams of charged particles from the sun. So this is the basic difference between these three terms. Next is, why do we need solar missions? First one is understanding the sun, the study of flares, coronal mass ejections and sunspots. Next, solar weather monitoring. Predict solar storms that disrupt the satellite and power grids, because when there are solar flares, when there are solar storms, what happens is that it affects our communication system, it affects our satellites. So to predict that and to preserve our communication equipments, we need to study the solar system. Next is impact on the Earth's climate, because the solar winds, they are going to increase the temperature on the Earth. So it is also important for us that we have to prepare for these events. To prepare for these events, we should know what can be the probable causes for occurrence of these events. For example, if there are solar flares or there are solar winds, then it is going to increase the temperature on the Earth. When the temperature on the Earth is increasing, it is going to directly affect the agriculture on the Earth. It is directly going to affect the monsoon of the Earth. So these things we can actually predict in advance, and it will help us in planning for these events. Last one is strengthening India's space capabilities, because it will provide support for interplanetary missions by studying these solar radiations. Next is, what are the other missions in this regard? For example, ASOS, Advanced Solar Based Solar Observatory, it is by China and it was launched in the year 2022, that is 1 year before India. Next is Solar Orbiter, it was launched by Europe in 2020. Parker Solar Probe, it was launched by USA in 2018. Then Corona's Photon by Russia in 2009. Then Hinode Solar B by Japan in 2006. And Solar and Heliospheric Observatory by USA in 1995. Now, based upon this information, you are in a position to attempt the question that is mentioned on the screen. So please try to attempt the question and post your answer in the chat box. Now, the backdrop for this topic is the news that avian flu, that is H5N1 in Madhya Pradesh, led to a market shutdown and killing of 700 plus chickens. This topic is relevant from the issue of national importance and science and technology, again covered in our GS3 paper. Now, in this topic, what we are going to study? First of all, we are going to see what is avian flu. Secondly, how it is transmitted. Is it possible transmission from human to human, or it is transmitted from animals to the human? Thirdly, we are going to see what is the impact of the avian flu on the animals as well as on humans. Lastly, we are going to see prevention and about influenza virus. The first thing that we have is about avian influ. It is a viral infection, that means it is caused by a virus. And it spreads among birds, as the name avian itself suggests that it is related with the birds, especially the poultry ones. It is a subtype of the influenza A virus and it is a zoonotic disease. So what do you mean by zoonotic disease? Zoonotic diseases are those diseases which can spread from animals to the humans. For example, rabies. For example, anthrax. Example, plague, Ebola or COVID-19. So these are the examples of the zoonotic diseases. That is, those diseases which can spread from the animals to the humans. Next thing is that the first known avian influenza outbreak was reported in Italy in 1878. It is caused by a highly pathogenic avian influenza HPAI virus H5N1 and H9N2. Now, there are no vaccines for human against this avian flu. Since 2022, it is continuing in USA and 70 human cases have been reported from USA since then. Now, how the transmission occurs? The transmission can be from bird to bird, bird to human, and third is human to human. Let's see which of the following transmission occurs with respect to avian influenza. So, bird to bird, it easily spreads through saliva, nasal secretions and feces. So, it is easily transmitted from bird to bird. Second is bird to humans. So, it is actually rare and occurs through direct contact with the infected bird or contaminated surfaces. So, if a human comes in direct contact with the infected bird or contaminated surface, then he may be affected by this avian influenza. Third is human to human contact. Now, it is extremely rare and it has not been sustained. So, we don't have to worry about human to human contact with respect to this avian influenza. The H5N1 avian influ has 60% mortality rate in infected humans. So, the mortality rate is quite high as such. Now, next is what is the impact of this avian flu? First is the bird symptom. What are the symptoms in the bird? It leads to sudden death in the poultry. Secondly, there is swollen head, diarrhea, respiratory distress, and drop in egg production. So this is how the birds are affected. Next is, if there are mild symptoms in the humans, then there will be fever, cough, sore throat, muscle aches, then running nose and headache. And if the symptoms are severe, then there will be pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS, difficulty in breathing, organ failure, neurological complication. So these are the effects of the avian flu. Next is prevention, how it can be prevented. The first one is that try to avoid direct contacts with the wild birds which are affected by this avian flu. Second is, the birds which have been affected, they have to be killed or they have to be killed. Thirdly, the poultry and eggs, if they are being consumed, they have to be cooked thoroughly and at a temperature more than 70 degrees Celsius. Lastly, biosecurity measures for the poultry farm should be taken. So these are the measures that should be taken in prevention of the avian flu. Now last is about influenza virus. It is a contiguous respiratory virus that affects humans and animals, and it has been divided on the basis of the antigen that is present on this virus. For example, there is influenza A which have antigen A, influenza B is having antigen B, influenza C is having antigen C, and likewise influenza D. Now this influenza A, it is having actually two subtypes. The first type is avian influenza, which is caused by AH5N1 and AH9N2. Second is swine influenza. It is having subtypes like AH1N1 and AH3N3. Next is influenza B. It affects humans and seal infection. Next is influenza C. It is having mild infections, and last one is influenza D, which is having cattle infections. So these are the subtypes of this influenza virus. Next is about how the naming is being done. The naming is being done on the basis of two proteins that exist on the surface of this virus. H stands for hemagglutinin and N stands for neuraminidase. And these are the two proteins that are present on the surface of this virus. So based upon this, on these proteins, the naming of this virus is being done. Now time for practice question. Please post your answer in the chat box. The next news article is about avalanches. Avalanches in Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand avalanche traps 24. Rescue efforts ongoing in Uttarakhand's Chamoli district. Now this topic is relevant from the point of issues of national importance, environment and disaster management. Now in this topic, what we are going to study, first of all, we are going to define what are avalanches, what are its causes, what are its various types, what are the important Indian sites which are prone to avalanches. Now first of all, let's define what are avalanches. Avalanches are defined as a rapid flow of snow, ice and debris down the slope, and it happens under the effect of gravity. Gravity is able to affect because of two basic reasons. First one is the friction between the snow and the surface has been reduced. Secondly, the mass of ice, snow and debris has been so much that the friction is not able to hold it up, and the effect of gravity is predominating there. So due to these two reasons, the avalanches occur, and for these two reasons to trigger, the various factors can be, the first factor is heavy snowfall. If the snowfall is heavy, the mass is going to increase and it will lead to impact of gravity increasing and avalanches. Secondly, there are temperature fluctuations. If the temperature fluctuations are happening, then it is going to loosen up the snow by melting it. By melting it, it is actually reducing the friction, and thus the effect of gravity is again increasing, and hence there is movement down the slope. Next thing is earthquake. If the earthquakes are occurring, it is going to shake it up and it is again going to loosen up the snow and the friction is going to be reduced. Next is deforestation. Forests actually hold up, they provide enough resistance so that these avalanches do not occur there, so that the movement of snow is not there. So if there is deforestation, the surface metal is loosened up. Due to this loosening, the events of avalanches actually increases. Lastly, human activities. Due to human activities, the avalanches can also occur. Next thing is types of avalanches. The avalanches have been classified as slab avalanche, slough avalanche, powder snow avalanche and wet snow avalanche. Slab avalanche actually means that when a hard layer of snow is on the top of a soft layer. For example, this is a slope, this is a soft layer, and upon this there is a hard layer. Now this soft layer is easily prone to move under the effect of gravity. When this inner layer is moving, what is going to happen? The outer hard layer is going to move along with that. So there is a mass movement of this snow, and this mass movement actually becomes very, very dangerous. So it is more dangerous than any other type of avalanche. Second is slough avalanche. Slough avalanche means when the weak layer of the snow is on the top. For example, it is here. And when this weak layer is moving, it is moving actually low mass or small mass of the snow. So it is less dangerous. Next one is powder snow avalanche. It is loose snow descending at high speed. That is known as powder snow avalanche. So when the loose snow is descending at a very high speed, it is known as powder snow avalanche. Last one is wet snow avalanche. It is triggered by warm air temperatures like sun and from the rain. So these are the 4 types of avalanches that we have. Now next is what are the impacts of the avalanches. So first and foremost is the impact of the life. The loss of human life, the loss of animal life, the loss of forest life, the loss of wildlife. So first and foremost will be the impact on the life. There will be loss of life. Second impact will be of the destruction of the infrastructure. The housing infrastructure, the road infrastructure, the communication infrastructure, they will be disrupted. There will be blockage of the roads. So the communication networks will be disrupted. So there will be loss of life, there will be destruction of the infrastructure, there will be blocked roads, and there will be disrupted communication networks as well. Now next thing is the prevention of the avalanches. पहली चीज तो ये है the scientists cannot accurately predict the exact time and location of these avalanches with complete certainty. However, we can still take certain steps so as to prevent these avalanches. The first and effective one is the controlled explosions. In these controlled explosions, what we are going to do is that we are going to have small explosions, and these small explosions are going to release the extra mass of snow from the slopes. When we are removing this extra mass of the snow from the slopes, what we are actually doing is that we are reducing the probability of the avalanches that can occur there. Second is afforestation. It is going to create resistance in the movement of the snow, and it is going to hold up the snow. Third is slope reinforcement. Again, it is having the same effect as that of the afforestation. And lastly is the early warning system, so that we can prevent the impact of the avalanches over the loss of life and of the destruction of these communication systems. Last part is the avalanche prone areas of India. Avalanche are going to occur where we are having snow. And snow in India only is found in Himalayas. So Himalayas are the areas which are avalanche prone in India. And basically the higher peaks of Himalayas where the snow cover is round the year, we are having the incidents of avalanches. So those are the avalanche prone areas in India. Now something about BRO also, Border Road Organization. This BRO was established in 1960 by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru under the Ministry of Defence. The basic objective of this BRO was to develop and maintain the road infrastructure in border areas and in strategic location. Important projects that the BRO has recently completed include the Atal Tunnel in Himachal Pradesh, the Zojila Pass in Ladakh area, and Sila Tunnel in Arunachal Pradesh. They ensure that our border connectivity is maintained year round. Now you are in a position to attempt the MCQs, and you can post your answer in the comment box. Now the next topic that we have is about heat waves. IMD has predicted above normal temperatures and intense prolonged heat waves across the summer for 2025. And it is relevant from the ecology and environment point of view as well as from the disaster management topic from GS paper 3. Under this topic, what we are going to cover? First of all, we are going to study what are heat waves. Secondly, what are the causes of the heat waves? What are the impacts of the heat waves? And what can be the solution to these heat waves? So holistically, we are going to cover about the heat waves. Now, first thing is that how do we define the heat waves? So heat waves are defined as a prolonged period of excessively high temperature compared to the normal. It occurs during the summer season between March and June. IMD has given a criteria for that. IMD is Indian Meteorological Department. The criteria is in plain areas it should be above 40 degrees Celsius. In coastal areas it should be above 37 degrees Celsius, and in the hilly regions it should be above 30 degrees Celsius and the time period is for 2 days. That is, for at least 2 days, these three thresholds of the temperature should be breached. Then the heat wave will be declared. Next is the causes and the various factors which are responsible for the heat waves. The first reason is the development of high pressure system. It traps the warm airs and prevent the heat from escaping. Second is the global warming. It has increased the average temperature and it has been due to the emissions. Third one is urban heat islands. The cities retain more heat due to infrastructure and it leads to increase in the overall temperature. Next one is drought conditions. The drought conditions actually leads to more evaporation and it dries the soil. When the soil is dry, it actually traps more heat and therefore we have a condition for heat wave. Next one is wind pattern changes. The disruptions in jet streams actually leads to prolonging the heat in the area, which leads to increase in the overall temperature. And the last one is the human activities like deforestation and industrialization, which leads to reduced cooling in the area and ultimately leading to the heat wave scenario. Next is effect of the heat waves. It can lead to health issues like heat strokes, dehydration and respiratory problems. Secondly, it can put strain on the infrastructure. For example, during heat waves, there will be more demand for the power. So there can be power shortages. It can affect the water infrastructure. It can put strain on the transport and health facilities as well. Next will be the effect on the air quality. Hot days worsen the air quality due to increased ground level ozone and pollution. Next will be, it will have a negative impact on the livestock also, because it will reduce the milk production, the growth and consumption rates in the livestock. Next will be the economic losses. There will be reduced workforce productivity due to extreme heat, and environmental impact will also be there. It can lead to wildfire, loss of biodiversity and water scarcity. And last will be decreased agriculture output, because it can damage the crops and reduce the yield and food supply for those crops. Now last part is what can be the possible measures and solutions while dealing with these heat waves. The first and foremost is that we should actually promote the energy conservation. We should be having energy efficient technologies which can reduce the heat emissions and can reduce the impact on the ecology. Second is that we should have effective plans. The plan should be prepared by the center as well as the state, and there should be emergency response planning also, so that in case of any event of the heat waves or extreme heat waves, we can actually mitigate its effect. Next is that the urban planning should be done in a manner so that there are increased green spaces and reflective surface so that the heat can be actually released out from that surface. Next one will be the infrastructure should be having those kind of materials which are heat resistance, whose absorbing power for the heat is very less, so that the heat island like situation can be avoided. And the last one will be, we should be identifying the vulnerable population and the supportive measures should be taken so that the impact of the heat waves on the health can be reduced. So with this, we complete the topic of heat wave. Now you are in a position to attempt the MCQ that is present on the screen. Please attempt it and answer in the comment box. Now comes the last topic of the day, which we are going to discuss in detail. The topic is mainstreaming wetland conservation. Now the backdrop for this is that the Meghalaya High Court recently initiated a suo motu public interest litigation to monitor wetland conservation in the state. So it is showing that it is not very much satisfied with the government's effort with respect to wetland conservation. Now this topic is relevant from the GS paper 3 point of view, which comes under biodiversity and environment. Now before moving ahead, first of all let's see what previous questions have been asked from this topic. It was asked in 2023 and in 2018 also. The question was, comment on the National Wetland Conservation Program initiated by the Government of India and name a few India's wetlands of international importance included in the Ramsar site. Next is what is wetland. Explain the Ramsar concept of wise use of the context of wetland conservation. Cite 2 examples of Ramsar site from India. Now, this year on February 2, we celebrated the International Wetland Day. This Wetland Day is celebrated every year since 1971, when the International Treaty for the Wetland Conservation, that is known as Ramsar Convention, was signed. So every year on the February 2, we celebrate the International Wetland Day. This year also we celebrated it. and the theme was protecting wetland for our common future. And the venue for this was Parvati Arga Bird Sanctuary, which is situated in Gonda, Uttar Pradesh. Last year, the venue was Sirpur in Indore, Madhya Pradesh, and the theme for 2024 was wetlands and human well-being. So from prelims point of view, you should know what is the theme for this year's International Wetland Day. Now the next thing is, what are wetlands? Wetlands, as defined by the International Convention of the Wetlands as well as by India's rules on the wetlands, it says that these are areas of marsh, fen, peat and water. These are areas of marsh, fen, peatland and water, whether natural or artificial, permanent or temporary, static or flowing water, that is with water that is static or flowing. The water is fresh, brackish or salty, including the areas of marine water, the depth of which at low tides does not exceed 6 meters. So these are the areas which are called wetlands. So this is how the wetland is defined. The next aspect that we have is the significance of the wetlands. Wetlands are significant for us in multiple ways. For example, from the hydrological function point of view, they are instrumental in flood control. They provide the extra space where the extra water can get accumulated and thus can be instrumental in flood control. Secondly, they act as natural buffers against the coastal erosion, storm surges and tsunami, thus preserving our coastal landscape. They help in sediment retention and prevent the sediment from going in the ocean. Also, they help in groundwater recharge and discharge, and they help in flow maintenance of the rivers and the streams. The next function that it has is the ecological importance. It supports high biodiversity by providing habitat support to various plants and animals. Next, it acts as the natural water filters and filters out the pollutants from the water. Also, it helps in fighting climate change by acting as carbon sink. Next is the economic and livelihood benefits that we get from the wetlands. It provides for inundated farming, floodplain fishing, livestock grazing and collection of flowers, leaves and reeds. So it is also having economic benefit for us. Lastly, it is also having religious and cultural value. For example, Lake Mansarovar. So it is having a religious and cultural value to us also. So wetlands are very significant for us in multiple ways. First of all, it has hydrological functions, it has ecological functions, it has economical functions, and it also has our religious and cultural values. Now next is the status of the wetlands. The global coverage of the wetlands is around 2.1 million square kilometers, which is 6% of the Earth's surface. It provides for 40.6% of the global ecosystem services. And if we talk about the wetland loss, 50% wetlands have been lost since 1900. And in the last 45 years, that is the time spanning from 1970 to 2015, the loss has been 35%. The annual decline rate as calculated by FAO, it is around 0.78%. It is 3 times than that of the decline rate of the natural vegetation. So that means the wetlands are declining fast as compared to the natural vegetation. And the impact it is having on biodiversity is that the inland species have declined by 81% and the coastal and marine species since 1970 have declined by 36%. So but the biodiversity impact is also very high of this wetland loss. And the extinction risk for the wetland plants and animals is also rising due to this wetland loss. Now coming to India, the total wetland area that India is having is 15.4 lakh hectares. Out of this, the natural wetlands that we have they cover around 66.6% area. And artificial wetlands, they cover around 33.3%. And of this natural wetland, the 43.9% is inland wetlands and 22.7% is the coastal wetlands. A trend that is being seen in India is that the natural wetlands are declining and the man-made wetlands are increasing. That is, their area is increasing, or their share in the wetlands is increasing. Secondly, the coastal wetlands have declined between 2006 to 2017-18. Also, 30% of the natural wetlands lost in last 4 decades, and the reasons are basically urbanization, infrastructure expansion, agriculture and pollution. If we see the urban areas, the wetland is as follows. For example, in Mumbai, it has lost 70% of the wetlands since 1970. In East Kolkata, the wetlands have shrunk by 36% in last 2 decades. Chennai, according to WWF, has lost 85% of its wetlands. And the reasons due to which we are losing our wetlands, they include anthropogenic factors as well as natural factors. The basic reason is actually the anthropogenic reason, due to which the natural factors have also arisen. Anthropogenic factor includes urbanization and infrastructure development, which has led to encroachment of the area under wetlands. For example, floodplains have been encroached by the infrastructure development and urbanization. Agriculture expansion. The pollution, it has led to decline of the wetlands. For example, due to pollution, there have been increase in the nutrient content of the wetlands. And due to this increase in the nutrient content, the phenomena of eutrophication have occurred, which have led to decline of the wetlands. Also, there is overexploitation of the resources. This overexploitation of the resources has led to decline of the wetland area. And unregulated tourism and recreation has also affected the health of the wetlands. Secondly comes the natural factors. The natural factors includes like rising temperature and droughts, which have led to evaporation of water from these wetlands and has led to reduction of the wetland area. Sea level rise and coastal erosion have also affected the wetlands. Then extreme weather events and invasive species have also affected the health of the wetlands. Next comes, what are the initiatives that are being taken for the conservation of these wetlands? Now, for the conservation of these wetlands at the global level, we are having various initiatives. For example, there are international treaties and conventions. For example, Ramsar Site, Convention on Biological Diversity. Then we have global programs and initiatives like UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We have regional and country specific efforts. For example, European Union is taking some efforts, USA is taking some efforts, and China is taking some efforts. Also, India is taking some efforts. Then there is financial research and support there, where we have Wetland International, World Bank and GEF or Global Economic Facility. Then Living Planet Report is there by WWF. Then there are programs with respect to awareness and capacity building, which includes World Wetland Day, IUCN Red List of Ecosystems. So these are the initiatives that are being taken by the global community for the conservation of these wetlands. Now let's see some of the initiatives in detail. The first initiative that we are having is Ramsar Convention of 1971. It is also known as International Convention on Wetland Conservation. It promotes wise use and designates Ramsar sites for protection. The last summit was held in 2022, that is known as Ramsar Convention COP14. It was held in Wuhan City and Geneva, Switzerland from November 5 to 13, 2022. It stressed the need for 5th Ramsar Strategic Plan and linking wetland conservation to broaden the environmental development initiatives under CBD and other initiatives. Now, another initiative is Wetland City Accreditations. It is a voluntary scheme offering global recognition and branding opportunities for cities valuing wetlands. It was approved at the Ramsar COP12 of 2015. It recognizes cities that take exceptional steps to protect urban and pre-urban wetlands. The aim is to promote conservation and wise use of wetlands, sustainable socio-economic benefits to local communities, sustainable city-wetland relationship, especially for Ramsar sites. The cities must meet the 6 international criteria from the Ramsar operational guidelines for WCA. So this was about the wetland city accreditation. Next is the Convention on Biological Diversity. It emphasizes on wetland biodiversity protection under the Aichi biodiversity targets and global biodiversity framework. The UNFCCC 1992 recognizes wetlands as the carbon sinks and includes them in climate adaptation and mitigation strategies. Next one is global programs and initiatives. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021-2030 aims to restore the wetland, forest, and other ecosystems. The Global Peatlands Initiative 2016 focuses on protecting and restoring the peatlands crucial for carbon storage and biodiversity. The Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform for the Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services provides scientific data on wetland degradation and conservation needs. So these are the important initiatives from the global perspective that we have for the wetland conservation. Next, what we have is the initiatives taken by India in this regard. So from India's perspective, we are having legal and regulatory framework. We are having conservation and rejuvenation programs as well. Then we are having policy and river basin integration. Then digital and research initiatives are also there. And we are having international commitments and collaboration, which includes Ramsar sites in India. First of all, let's see what are the international commitments and collaborations of India with respect to wetlands. So we are signatory to the Ramsar Convention and have been a party since 1982. A total of 89 designated Ramsar sites are in India right now. And there have been 4 new additions this year. The 4 new additions are, the first one is Udwa Lake, that is in Jharkhand. Second is Tirthangal and Sakarkotai in Tamil Nadu. For Sikkim and Jharkhand, this is the first time that a Ramsar site has been accorded. So these 2 sites are the first sites for Jharkhand and Sikkim. Lastly, the total Ramsar area that we are having is 1.538 million hectares, and Tamil Nadu has the highest number of Ramsar sites, that is 20. After that comes Uttar Pradesh, which is having 10 Ramsar sites. The next initiative is the legal and regulatory framework. Under this, we have wetland conservation and management rules that were framed in 2017, and they have been notified under Environment Protection Act of 1986. So this becomes important for us. So under which act these wetland conservation and regulatory rules have been framed. So these have been framed under Environment Protection Act. And which is the ministry responsible for it? It is the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. Now, it aims to conserve and manage wetlands while allowing wise use. Wise use means that we can use them in sustainable manner. It empowers states to identify and notify wetlands for conservation. So, is having the authority to identify and notify for wetlands. It is the state who can identify and notify it. Next is the National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystem. This is also again important for us. It is a centrally sponsored scheme with cost sharing between center and state. It has merged 2 programs. The first one was National Wetland and Conservation Program, and next one is National Lake Conservation Plan. So these 2 have been merged to form the NPCA, or National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystem. Then a total of 164 wetlands have been sanctioned for conservation, and the amount is 1066.43 crore rupees, which will be released as the central assistance. Then it will support wetland restoration, monitoring and community participation. So it is focusing on 3 areas. It will be monitoring, it will be having activities for restoration, and it will be also allowing for community participation. Then activities will include wastewater treatment, desilting, biodiversity conservation and community participation. It will provide funding and technical support for wetland conservation also. The next initiative is Wetlands Rejuvenation Program of 2020. It was again launched by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change to restore 500 plus wetlands. It involves baseline data collection, health assessment, stakeholder engagement and management planning. The next initiative is Amrit Dharohar Initiative. It was launched in 2023 as a part of 2023-24 budget. It aims to enhance biodiversity, increase carbon stock, boost ecosystem and provide community livelihood over 3 years. It will be implemented over 3 years through collaboration with central ministries, state wetland authorities and other institutions. So here you can see one authority is there, that is known as State Wetland Authority. It focuses on 4 key areas. First is species and habitat conservation, then nature tourism, then wetlands livelihood and wetlands carbon. So it is focusing on biodiversity, livelihood and tourism, and last one is carbon sequestration or carbon sink. Then next program we have is Mission Sahbhagita. So नाम ही देखो, सीधा name Sahbhagita. It was launched in 2022 again by the same ministry, Ministry of Forest and Environment Climate Change. And its objective was to integrate the wetland conservation into development planning. It aims to create healthy, well-managed wetland network for water and food security, disaster resilience, employment generation, species conservation, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and preservation of cultural heritage. Next is the National Wildlife Action Plan. It recognizes wetlands as the crucial for biodiversity and ecosystem services. It proposes a national wetland mission for the conservation and sustainable use. The next is the integration with Namami Gange program. National Mission for Clean Ganga integrates wetland conservation with river basin management. It is recognized as the model for nationwide wetland conservation. Next are the digital and research initiatives. We are having Wetlands of India portal. It was launched in 2021 and it provides state-wise dashboards, data, repositories and capacity building resources for wetland conservation. Next we have is National Wetland Decadal Change Atlas. It has been prepared by the Space Application Center at Ahmedabad and it highlights the wetland changes over the past decade across India. Then another initiative is the Center for Wetland Conservation and Management 2021. It was established under the National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management and was established on the World Wetland Day, that is on 2nd February. It focuses on research, policy planning and knowledge sharing. Next is the use of remote sensing and GIS, which will help in monitoring the wetland health and tracking encroachments as well. Then from the state and community perspective, what initiatives we are having? First of all, we are having state wetland authorities which were established in each state to monitor and manage the wetlands. Secondly, community-based conservation. For example, Lothak Lake and Chilka Lake, the communities are being involved in restoration of these wetlands. Then there are awareness and capacity building programs also. For example, World Wetland Day that is celebrated on 2nd February every year. So it helps in promoting awareness about the wetland conservation. So these were the initiatives with respect to wetland conservation in India. Now you are in a position to attempt the mains question as visible on your screens. So with this, we conclude the discussion for the day. We hope that this would have been helpful for you. Thank you.